watching Inside Automotive with Jim Fitzpatrick.
In early October, the California New Car Dealers Association's 2023 franchise bill, AB 473, was signed into law, strengthening franchise laws in the state for dealers. Joining us now to drill down what this really means for dealers is Brian Maas, who's the president of the California New Car Dealers Association. Thanks so much, Brian, for joining us today, and congratulations on the bill.
Thank you, Jim, and great to be back with you.
Sure. Fighting the good fight every day for dealers out there in California. So can you explain the significance of this bill for franchise dealers in the state?
Sure. Happy to dive into it with you. So one of the things we recognized when we were putting together our bill package this year is there's a potential existential threat for dealers who were facing competition, not just from Tesla, Rivian, and Lucid and other direct selling manufacturers, but their own business partners who were making noises about wanting to compete with their own franchisees by selecting certain brands or models and selling those directly to consumers, even though franchise dealers would love to have those products. So we crafted a provision in our bill to say that manufacturers can't compete with their own franchisees in sales or service. And that provision was the centerpiece of our franchise bill this year.
Gotcha. Talk to us about the competition portion of the bill, if you can break that down for us.
Sure. So previously, our law said that a manufacturer couldn't compete with a dealer of the same line make in the relevant market area.
Okay.
And that law hadn't been updated in a couple decades. Obviously, the internet is around, and
sure,
people can buy cars wherever they want. And we realized we needed to dive in and update that, especially with noises being made by VW's Scout brand and the new partnership of Sony and Honda. So what we did is we took out the relevant market area and line make restrictions and said, you can't compete with your own franchisees. And because we already had on the books in a bill we did in 2019, a broad definition of affiliate, there was really no way for Sony, Honda, or VW Scout to get out from under this provision.
Yeah.
And unsurprisingly, they vehemently opposed it, exposing their hand in terms of what their intentions were relative to our dealers.
For sure.
And we were able to convince the legislature unanimously to support that provision, and the governor signed it, as you mentioned earlier this month.
Both sides of the aisle.
Absolutely. So we're very proud of that. When we do these bills, we leave no stone unturned, and every legislator we want to reach out and talk to, from the most conservative Republican to the most liberal Democrat. They all have dealers in their district. They all understand what dealers bring to their communities, and making sure that they don't favor out-of-state automakers over their constituents.
Sure, sure. So where does Scout stand on all of this? Are they not going to sell cars in California?
It's a great question. So obviously this puts a dent in their announced plans.
Sure.
We haven't seen any public announcements from Scout since the bill was signed.
Okay.
It doesn't technically take effect until January 1st of 2024.
Okay.
But of course, they've produced 0 cars so far. So it's going to be a couple years before they get up to speed. Florida also updated their franchise law.
Mm-hmm.
They approached it slightly differently than we did, but the net effect is the same. So you've got 2 of the biggest states in the country that have made it clear that it's going to be very difficult for VW Scout, Sony, Honda, and similar efforts by existing OEMs to compete with their franchisees.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And what's interesting about that is you've got a Democratic governor in California and you got a Republican governor in Florida. So it seems like everybody is pretty much on board with this, and of course, based on the unanimous vote as well, right?
Yeah, and I will say one of the arguments that the automakers were making is this would somehow hurt EVs because the Scout brand and the Sony Honda brand being announced were going to be EV only. And we made it clear to the legislature and the governor that this has nothing to do with how the vehicle's propelled.
Sure.
It was all about they wanted to make decisions at the expense of their business partner dealers. And we didn't think that was appropriate. And clearly the legislature and governor agreed.
Sure. Good move. And congratulations on that. The bill also incorporates a level of fairness into manufacturer-imposed DC fast charging programs, right? Specifically, the Ford situation. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah. So when Ford announced this Model E program a little over a year ago, we and many of our dealer association partners from across the country raised all kinds of concerns with the Ford program. But what seemed particularly unique and onerous about Ford's effort is they were asking dealers to install public-facing DC fast chargers. And that didn't make sense to us. It's one thing to ask a dealer to install a charger to service or get ready for sale EVs. It's another thing altogether to turn dealerships into the equivalent of gas stations by allowing the public to come and refuel their vehicles. And the original iteration of the program was it was 24/7 access to public charging.
Wow.
So we decided to include a provision in our bill, which survived all the way through to the end, that said if a manufacturer imposes a public DC fast charging requirement, they have to split the cost with the dealer, 50-50. And then the automakers pushed back and said, well, that's not fair. You're going to make a bunch of money on charging. When these customers come and charge their vehicles.
Oh my gosh. The vehicles that we bought from you, Mr. Manufacturer.
Rather than laugh, what we said is fine. We'll call your bluff. We'll split the revenue that we get from charging with the automaker as well. And that's the provision that survived in the bill, and it'll take effect January 1st.
Interesting. Okay. So California is typically the trendsetter state when it comes to automotive legislation. Do you expect to see a lot of other states passing similar laws?
I think a lot of states are going to look at the competition provision in particular. What we obviously want to avoid is a circumstance where one state's laws are outdated and an automaker takes advantage of the rules in that state to try and sell, maybe via the internet or some other platform, into cross-border or distant states. And I think, as the California experience has shown, legislators are going to react pretty positively to a circumstance where dealers just want to be treated fairly and have the opportunity to sell these new vehicles that are coming. And certainly in California, where our EV market share is over 21%, our dealers have demonstrated they're ready, able, and willing to sell EVs. It's not about that. It's about making sure they have access to all those cars that are coming in the pipeline.
That's right. That's right. If there were ever a case to be made for why your state associations or the state associations that are out there are so vitally important, this is a perfect case. I mean, who's going to be fighting this fight? No individual dealer group is going to take this on, nor probably could they. This is just one more example as to why dealers really need to support their associations and get involved with their associations and just do everything they can to help your efforts, right? Fight battles like this.
For sure. Our collective mission, whether it's the California Association, local associations, all the way up to NADA, our job is to protect the franchise system and enhance the ability of dealers to sell and service vehicles to their customers.
That's right.
And as you mentioned, Jim, nobody's going to step in and do that for the dealers other than the dealers. And that's why the associations are so important to encourage dealer participation.
So vitally important. Well, one of the best association presidents, Brian Maas, the president of the California New Car Dealers Association. Thank you so much for joining us. This has been very informative. I know a lot of states are watching what you do, as we just mentioned, and I know that a lot of the California dealers are appreciative of your efforts out there. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me on, Jim. Appreciate the time.
Thanks for watching Inside Automotive with Jim Fitzpatrick.